The first person to laugh at Leah Morgan was the hospital president. The second was the chief financial officer. By the time the laughter reached the donor tables beneath the chandeliers of St. Catherine Medical Center's glass atrium, Leah had already decided she was going to lose her job. She just hadn't decided whether she cared. "Miss Morgan," President Henry Caldwell said into the microphone, wearing the strained smile of a man accustomed to having uncomfortable people quietly removed from expensive rooms. "This is neither the time nor the place." Leah stood at the edge of the stage in her plain navy dress. Her hospital identification badge still clipped at her waist because she had come directly from the pharmacy downstairs. In each hand, she held a medication bottle. Identical white plastic. Identical blue and silver label. Identical manufacturer. Identical dosage. Nearly identical lot number. Around her sat pharmaceutical executives, surgeons, trustees, city officials, wealthy donors, and people who had paid $5,000 a plate to celebrate St. Catherine's new pharmaceutical purchasing agreement. The agreement had supposedly saved the hospital more than $18 million. Leah knew exactly how. "Then tell me when the right time is," she said. The room went quieter. Caldwell's smile vanished. At the nearest table, Dr. Adrian Vale leaned back in his chair. Vale was St. Catherine's executive vice president, 46 years old, immaculate in a charcoal tuxedo, with silver at his temples and the calm, polished face of a man who had spent 20 years learning how to appear compassionate while calculating what everyone in a room was worth. He had negotiated the new contract personally. "Leah," he said gently, as though addressing a confused patient, "we've discussed your concerns." "No. You told me to stop documenting them." Something shifted in the room. Leah heard someone inhale. She also noticed the man sitting 3 tables from the stage. He had not laughed. He had not spoken. And unlike everyone else, he was not looking at the bottles. He was looking at her. Nicolas Bellini sat with one hand resting beside an untouched glass of whiskey. 39. Black Italian suit. Dark hair swept neatly back. A face too controlled to be handsome in any gentle way. Men like Nicolas did not need introductions in Chicago. His family name had been whispered in courtrooms, union halls, private clubs, construction offices, and police stations for 3 generations. No conviction had ever touched him. His legitimate companies owned warehouses, freight terminals, security firms, restaurants, commercial property, and one of the largest private logistics networks in Illinois. People called him a businessman when cameras were present. They called him something else when they believed no one important was listening. Mafia Boss. Leah knew Bellini Logistics handled St. Catherine's medical freight, which meant if she was right, the man watching her might lose millions, or much more. "Valerose. This young woman is a pharmacy technician," he said. "A conscientious employee, certainly, but she doesn't understand international procurement." Leah looked at him. "I understand a batch code." Then she walked to the presentation table. She placed both bottles beneath the overhead document camera. Their enlarged labels appeared on the enormous screen behind her. "Bottle 1 arrived 11 months ago through our previous supplier." She rotated it sideways. "Bottle 2 arrived Monday through North Star Medical Distribution under the new contract." She rotated the second. To anyone looking quickly, they're identical. Caldwell crossed his arms. "And?" Leah pointed. "There." Nothing happened. Then a pharmacist near the front row stood. He moved closer to the screen. Leah continued. "The 4th character of the microprinted batch identifier is supposed to be laser-etched. On the new bottle, it's thermal ink." Vale's expression changed almost imperceptibly. Leah saw it. So did Nicolas Bellini. "The expiration font is also wrong by less than 0.5 millimeter," Leah said. "And the security varnish reflects blue under UV. The manufacturer changed to violet 16 months ago." The silence became absolute. Caldwell stared at the screen. "That doesn't prove counterfeit medication." "No." Leah reached into her purse and removed a folded laboratory result. "But this does." She placed it beneath the camera. "The older vial contains the labeled concentration. The discounted shipment contains 58%. Someone swore. A chair scraped backward. Leah's fingers had begun trembling, so she curled them around the table edge. "These medications are being administered to patients upstairs." Caldwell's face drained. Vale recovered first. Illegally removed hospital property for private testing. I reported it 3 times internally. You violated procedure. Patients may have received counterfeit drugs. Allegedly. Leah stared at him. You're more worried about the word allegedly than the patients. That was when Nicolas Bellini stood. He did it slowly. Yet somehow every conversation trying to begin in the room stopped. Nicolas buttoned his jacket. Then he looked toward one of the 2 men seated behind him. Matteo. His security chief immediately rose. Freeze every Bellini medical shipment in Illinois. Vale turned sharply. Nicolas. Every truck, every warehouse, every subcontractor. You understand what that would cost? Nicolas finally looked at Vale. I understand exactly what it will cost. His voice was quiet. That made it worse. No medical freight moves until those bottles are authenticated. Caldwell stepped down from the stage. You cannot unilaterally paralyze the hospital supply chain. Nicolas looked at Leah. She had expected anger from him. Instead, what she saw was something colder. Something almost frightened. Miss Morgan, he said, how many suspect shipments have you seen? 7. Vale interrupted. She has no authority. Nicholas's gaze never left Leah. How many? She swallowed. 7 shipments. 4 medications. Same supplier. Same type of printing discrepancy. And you documented them? Yes. Where? Leah hesitated. Vale noticed. So did Nicolas. The first flicker of real danger entered the room. Leah said, somewhere safe. Nicholas's expression changed. Not approval. Recognition. Good. The lights went out. Screaming erupted beneath the chandeliers. A second later, glass shattered. Nicolas crossed the distance between them before Leah understood what had happened. His arm locked around her waist. He dragged her behind the marble podium as another pane exploded above the stage. People scattered. Security guards shouted. Emergency lights flashed red along the walls. Leah heard 3 sharp pops from somewhere beyond the glass atrium. Gunshots. Nicolas covered her with his body. His palm pressed against the back of her head. Stay down. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Were they shooting at me? Nicolas looked over the edge of the podium. His face had become completely emotionless. Yes. How can you know? Another shot cracked against marble. Nicolas looked down at her. Because no one was shooting until you put those bottles on the table. 3 hours later, Leah stood inside Nicolas Bellini's penthouse 40 floors above Chicago and told him she wanted to leave. Rain dragged silver lines down the windows. 2 armed men stood outside the elevator. Her phone sat dismantled on a marble counter after Bellini security found unauthorized tracking software installed through what appeared to be a hospital scheduling application. Leah folded her arms. I'm not staying here. Nicolas removed his suit jacket. There was blood on his white shirt cuff. Not his. One of his guards had been grazed during the escape. You are until we know who tried to kill you. You don't get to decide that. I already did. That may work on people who are afraid of you. He looked at her. You're afraid of me. Leah hated that he was right. She also hated that he seemed to respect her more for refusing to admit it. I'm afraid of men who believe power makes consent optional. His jaw tightened. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Nicolas gestured toward the elevator. You may leave. Leah blinked. But if you do, Matteo goes with you. Another car follows. Your apartment gets cleared before you enter, and no one approaches you without being checked. That isn't leaving. It is the version currently available. You are unbelievable. I have been called worse. I'm sure. His mouth almost moved. Almost. But Nicolas Bellini did not smile. He poured water into a glass and handed it to her. Leah didn't take it. I need my records. Where are they? At my apartment. I'll have them retrieved. No. Miss Morgan. Leah. His eyes settled on hers. It was the first time she had given him permission to use her name. Something quiet passed between them. Nicolas, she said deliberately, testing the effect of using his. If you want my help, you don't touch my evidence without me. He leaned against the counter. And if I say this is no longer merely your investigation, then I remind you protecting Bellini Logistics is not the same as protecting patients. His gaze sharpened. You think I don't know that? I think powerful men become very talented at confusing their interests with everyone else's. The room became dangerously still. Matteo, standing several yards away, suddenly found the city skyline fascinating. Nicolas walked closer, not threateningly. Somehow that would have been easier. He stopped with barely 2 feet between them. Do you speak to hospital executives like this? Yes. That explains tonight. Does everyone around you agree with you? No. Do they tell you when you're wrong? A silence. Rarely. That explains a lot too. This time she saw it. The faintest shadow of amusement. Gone immediately. Then Nicolas said, "We retrieve your records together." Leah's apartment door was open when they arrived. Nothing had been stolen. That was worse. Every drawer had been pulled out. Her books had been scattered. Her mattress had been cut open. Family photographs lay shattered on the floor, and on her kitchen table stood one counterfeit medication bottle. Leah froze. Nicolas stepped in front of her. "Don't touch anything." She stared around him. Beside the bottle sat a photograph. Her mother, walking outside the rehabilitation center where she worked part-time. Leah stopped breathing. No. Nicolas picked up the photograph by its corner. Someone had written an address on the back. Her mother's address. "I need to call her. She's already being moved." Leah looked at him. "What?" "I had Matteo send 2 men the moment we found the tracker on your phone. You sent men to my mother. To protect her. You had no right." "No." His answer stopped her. Nicolas did not defend himself. He looked at the image in his hand. "But I would rather have you hate me tonight than identify her body tomorrow." Leah's anger collapsed beneath fear. She sat on the edge of the ruined couch. For the first time since the reception, her composure cracked. Nicolas stood before her, helpless in a way she would later realize almost no one had ever seen. His hand lifted. He nearly touched her cheek, then stopped. His fingers curled slowly. He lowered them. "My sister was 24, he said. Leah looked up. Nicolas stared toward the dark windows. She had leukemia. The words seemed physically difficult for him. "My father imported a treatment through a private clinic because we were told it would give her better odds." Leah understood before he finished. The medicine was counterfeit. "Yes." A long silence. "She might have died anyway," Nicolas said. "That is what every doctor told us afterward. It was supposed to make the uncertainty easier. It didn't." "No." His voice became colder. "So when you stood in that ballroom and showed me those bottles, I wasn't thinking about money." Leah watched him. "What were you thinking about?" "My sister vomiting blood, while someone somewhere counted the profit." He looked at her. "That will not happen again on one of my trucks." Something changed between them that night. Not trust. Not yet. But Leah began to understand the difference between the man Chicago feared and the wound he kept buried beneath tailored suits and perfect control. For the next 9 days, they became nearly inseparable. Not by choice. At least that was what Leah told herself. Bellini Security discovered the counterfeit drugs had entered through North Star Medical Distribution, a company technically owned by a holding corporation in Delaware. That holding corporation belonged to another company registered in Nevada, and the Nevada company had paid inspection consulting fees to a firm partially controlled by Adrian Vale's brother-in-law. Leah spent 12-hour days in a secure Bellini warehouse, comparing packaging against legitimate samples. Nicolas sat through every briefing. He did not understand pharmaceutical verification when they began. By the 4th day, he could identify tampered holograms himself. Leah found that irritatingly attractive. She also learned he drank coffee black, slept approximately 4 hours a night, never raised his voice, and remembered the names of every employee injured during the shutdown. He learned she hummed while concentrating, that she called her mother every evening, that she skipped meals when frightened, that she refused to let his staff carry boxes for her merely because Nicolas was watching. He began leaving food beside her paperwork without mentioning it. She began eating it without thanking him. Neither acknowledged the arrangement. One rainy evening, Leah emerged from the warehouse after midnight and found Nicolas standing beside a black SUV. "You're still here?" "Yes." "Why?" "I'm taking you home. You employ drivers." "Yes." "Then why are you taking me?" His eyes held hers. Rain dotted the shoulders of his black coat. "I did not say it was logical." Her pulse stumbled. She looked away first. That became the pattern. A hand at the small of her back that never quite touched. His eyes finding her across crowded rooms. His body positioning itself between her and strangers before he seemed aware he was doing it. her beginning to recognize the precise tightening of his jaw whenever another man stood too close. Attraction arrived like a dangerous substance leaking beneath a locked door. Neither discussed it, until Dr. Evan Mercer appeared. Evan was a federal pharmaceutical investigator brought in quietly after Leah insisted Bellini's private investigation needed government oversight. Nicolas disliked him immediately. Leah noticed. "You look annoyed." "I am. Because he's federal?" "No." "Because he asked questions about your company?" "No." "Then why?" Nicolas watched Evan laughing with Leah beside a loading dock. "He looks at you too much." She stared at him. Then, despite everything, she laughed. Nicolas's expression darkened. "That amuses you?" "Terribly." "Why?" "Because the feared Nicolas Bellini is jealous of a man wearing orthopedic shoes." "I'm not jealous." "Of course not. I dislike his shoes." That was the first time she saw him smile. A real one. Small. Private. Devastating. Then the warehouse lights died. Nicolas's smile vanished. Gunfire exploded through the loading bay. Down. He hit Leah hard enough to send them both behind a steel pallet. Bullets shredded cardboard overhead. Matteo returned fire from behind a forklift. Nicolas dragged Leah through a side corridor as emergency lights pulsed. "Stay with me." "I am." A masked man appeared at the corridor entrance. Nicolas fired once. The man fell. Leah flinched. Nicolas saw it. For half a second, horror entered his face not at what he had done, but at the fact she had witnessed it. Then another attacker slammed into him. The fight was fast. Brutal. Leah grabbed a fire extinguisher and struck the attacker across the shoulder just as he reached for Nicolas's weapon. Nicolas stared at her. "What? You were supposed to run. He was trying to kill you. That is generally when people run. You've met me." Even there, surrounded by alarms and gun smoke, something fierce moved through his eyes. Then he grabbed her face in both hands. Not kissing her. Not even close. He just stared at her as if confirming she existed. "Never do that again." Leah's breath trembled. "You don't get to order me." "I know." His forehead nearly touched hers. "That does not mean I will stop trying." The attack gave them something the shooters had not intended. A body. One attacker survived, and inside his burner phone was a number connected to a Bellini employee. Marco Santoro, Nicolas's director of medical freight compliance. A man who had worked beside him for 11 years. The betrayal nearly broke the investigation. It nearly broke Nicolas too. Marco disappeared before they could question him. Then federal agents found 6 Bellini inspection certificates, signed electronically using Nicolas's credentials. Leah stared at the documents. If these are accepted as authentic, they can argue you knew. They're supposed to. Evan folded his arms. "Bellini. This could become a federal conspiracy case." Nicolas seemed indifferent. Leah was not. "You need counsel." "I have counsel." "You need to stop acting like prison is an inconvenience you can intimidate." His eyes flicked toward her. "It would be inconvenient." She almost shouted. Instead, she pulled him into an empty office. "You knew Marco had access to your digital authorization." "Yes." "And you didn't tell me?" "I didn't know he was involved." "That wasn't my question." Nicolas's silence was answer enough. Leah stepped backward. There it was. The thing she had feared from the beginning. Power protecting itself. "You withheld information." "I withheld one vulnerability until I knew who was leaking our investigation." "You manipulated what I knew. To keep you alive." "No, you don't get to use that sentence every time you decide for me." His face hardened. "Someone has attempted to kill you twice, and that does not make me yours." The words landed harder than she intended. Nicolas went still. "I know that." "Do you?" "Yes." His voice dropped. "You think I don't understand the difference between wanting something and having a right to it?" Leah couldn't answer. Nicolas took one step closer. "I want you in my home where I know you are safe. I want every person who frightened you removed from this city. I want Mercer to stop smiling at you. I want you to stop walking into rooms before I know who is inside them." Her heartbeat became painful. He continued, "I want many things I have absolutely no right to demand." Silence filled the office. "Then why didn't you tell me about Marco?" "Because I was afraid." That surprised her more than anything. Nicolas Bellini did not look away. "I was afraid you would see those documents and decide I was exactly what everyone told you I was." Leah's anger softened, but did not disappear. You don't get trust by controlling what someone is allowed to know. No. Then earn it. He nodded once. And from that moment forward, Nicolas gave her everything. Every ledger, every confidential route, every bribery allegation, every company weakness, even records that could send members of his own organization to prison. It was the first time in his adult life Nicolas Bellini had willingly placed his throat in another person's hands. The breakthrough came from a bottle that should never have existed. Leah noticed it at 2:13 inches the morning. She was sitting barefoot on the floor of Nicolas's study, surrounded by shipping manifests. Nicolas had fallen asleep in a chair 10 feet away. For once, his face looked younger without control, holding every muscle in place. Leah stared at him longer than she should have. Then she noticed the route code. 3 counterfeit batches had supposedly been inspected at a Bellini warehouse near Lake Michigan, except the corresponding temperature logs showed the warehouse refrigeration system had been offline for renovations. No. Nicolas woke instantly. What? These bottles were never there. Within minutes, they reconstructed the route. North Star's medication entered Chicago legitimately labeled as research chemicals. The counterfeit pharmaceuticals were packaged later at a hidden facility. The fake Bellini inspections existed to make investigators look at Nicolas. And Vale? Nicolas asked. Leah stared at a recurring destination. Street Catherine Annex 4. Nicolas frowned. That building closed 5 years ago. Exactly. They drove there before dawn, against Mateo's objections. Annex 4 stood abandoned near the river, windows black, snow beginning to drift across its loading dock. Inside, they found a pharmaceutical packaging line. Thousands of bottles, labels, tamper seals, boxes from hospitals across 3 states. Leah stared in horror. This is bigger than Street Catherine. A sound came behind them. Marco Santoro stepped from the shadows. He was holding a gun. Nicolas moved immediately in front of Leah. Marco's face twisted. You should have protected the company. I am. You froze $80 million in contracts because some technician noticed ink. Nicolas's voice turned lethal. Her name is Leah. Marco laughed. There. That's what changed. Leah felt Nicolas become motionless. Marco continued. You stopped thinking like your father the moment she walked into that ballroom. No, Nicolas said. I stopped thinking like my father when my sister died. Marco's expression faltered. Then Adrian Vale emerged from behind the packaging equipment. Perfect coat, perfect gloves. No hospital smile now. You should have let Caldwell fire her, Vale said. Leah stared at him. How many patients? Vale sighed. You still believe this is about individual patients. How many? Do you know what legitimate biologics cost? Hospitals are collapsing under pharmaceutical pricing. We provided products at sustainable rates. At half strength, most were within therapeutic margins. You sold poison. I sold access. Nicolas took a slow step forward. Marco raised his gun. Don't. Vale looked at Leah. You could have accepted a promotion. We prepared one for you. Pharmacy operations manager. $120,000 a year. You thought that would work? I thought everyone had a price. Leah glanced at Nicolas. No. Vale followed her gaze. Apparently some people have weaknesses instead. The first explosion came from outside. A Bellini SUV erupted in flame. Nicolas turned. Marco fired. Leah felt Nicolas slam into her. They hit the concrete. For one sickening second, she thought he had been shot. Then armed men flooded the loading dock. A rival crew Vale had hired to erase everyone inside. Gunfire tore through the machinery. Nicolas dragged Leah behind a steel mixing tank. Are you hit? No. You? No. You're bleeding. Glass. Mateo and the surviving Bellini guards entered from the rear. The abandoned factory became thunder and flashing light. Valron. Leah saw him heading toward the refrigerated storage wing carrying a black evidence case. The records. Nicolas grabbed her wrist. Let him go. That case proves everything. Leah, if he destroys it. I said let him go. She stared at Nicolas and finally understood what had changed. The man who once would have sacrificed almost anything to protect his empire was now willing to let the evidence disappear rather than risk her. She gently removed his hand. Nicolas, those records aren't about your company. He knew what she meant. Passion. Families. Dead people who deserved names. He closed his eyes briefly, then swore. Stay behind me. They went after Vale. They found him inside the old cold storage chamber. Rows of counterfeit medications surrounded him. Vale had spilled accelerant across the floor. He held a lighter. One more step. Leah froze. Vale smiled. Do you know why men like Bellini always lose eventually, Leah? Nicolas raised his gun. Vale continued. Because eventually they find one person who makes them irrational. Nicholas's aim remained perfectly steady. That is where you are wrong. Oh? You think she made me weak? His eyes never left Vale. She taught me what was worth protecting. Vale threw the lighter. Flames raced across the floor. Nicolas lunged. He knocked Leah behind a reinforced door as fire climbed the shelving. Vale fired. The bullet struck Nicolas beneath the ribs. Leah screamed. Nicolas returned fire. Vale collapsed. The room filled with smoke. Nicolas fell to one knee. Leah reached him. No. Look at me. I'm fine. You've been shot. Minor disagreement. This is not the time to become funny. He almost smiled. Then, his face went pale. The exit behind them was blocked by flame. Leah dragged his arm around her shoulders. Nicolas, stand. Leave me. Her eyes filled. You really do become stupid when injured. Leah, if you die after spending 2 weeks ordering me around, I swear I will find a way to make your afterlife unbearable. He looked at her. Smoke curled between them. Somewhere beyond the fire, Matteo shouted. Nicolas touched her face. This time he did not stop himself. His blood-stained fingers rested against her cheek. I love you. Leah froze. His eyes closed. Nicolas. She slapped his cheek. Absolutely not. You do not get to confess and then pass out. His eyes opened weakly. You said I was controlling. You are. Bossu. Extremely. Criminal. Frequently. His mouth moved. Still love me? Leah hooked her arm tighter around him. Ask me when we're outside. A section of burning shelving collapsed. Matteo broke through a side service door 30 seconds later. He found Leah half carrying Nicolas through the smoke. Nicholas's blood covered the front of her coat. Behind them, thousands of counterfeit bottles melted in the flames. Nicolas woke in Street Catherine Medical Center 2 days later, with Leah asleep in a chair beside his bed. 4 Bellini guards stood in the hallway. 2 federal agents stood across from them. The image was so absurd he might have laughed if breathing deeply did not hurt. Leah opened her eyes. She stared at him. Then she stood. Nicolas braced himself for tears. She slapped his shoulder. Ove, you were unconscious for 37 hours. I apologize. No, you don't. No. Her mouth trembled. Nicolas held out his hand. Leah looked at it, then placed hers inside. His fingers closed around hers. Not possessively. Carefully. Val? Alive. In custody. Marco? Also alive. The records? Recovered from the fireproof case. Federal investigators have North Star's accounts, Vale's shell companies, hospital payment records, inspection bribes, everything. Nicolas nodded. And Caldwell? Resigned this morning. Bellini Logistics? Under federal review. His expression became unreadable. Leah squeezed his hand. But Mercer says your cooperation matters. Freezing the shipments probably prevented thousands of counterfeit doses from reaching patients. Nicolas looked toward the window. Snow-covered Chicago. I should have known what moved through my warehouses. You should have had better systems. He glanced at her. That was Leah. No absolution she did not believe. No comforting lie. But, she continued, the moment you learned you stopped everything. That matters too. Silence settled between them. Then Nicolas said, I remember saying something in the warehouse. Leah's cheeks warmed. You were losing blood. I remember perfectly. That seems medically unlikely. Leah. She tried to withdraw her hand. He held it. Nicolas. Answer me. She looked into the face of a man feared throughout Chicago. A man who could terrify executives with silence. A man who had crossed gunfire for her before admitting why. A man who had finally learned that protection without trust was only another form of control. I was going to, she said, when you were outside. I'm outside the cold storage room. You're impossible. I've heard that. She leaned closer. His eyes dropped to her mouth. The tension between them, denied through warehouses and rainstorms and sleepless nights, finally became unbearable. But Nicolas did not pull her toward him. He waited. For perhaps the first time in his life, a man accustomed to taking whatever he wanted simply waited to be chosen. Leah touched his jaw. "I love you too." Something in him broke. Quietly. Completely. He closed his eyes against her palm. When he opened them again, the feared Nicolas Bellini looked almost frightened by the happiness she had placed within reach. Then Leah kissed him. Slowly. Carefully. No urgency. No possession. Just two exhausted people who had survived long enough to stop pretending they felt nothing. When they separated, Nicolas rested his forehead against hers. "You realize," he murmured, "Mercer is never entering this room again." Leah laughed softly. There he is. 6 months later, Street Catherine unveiled the Morgan Bellini Medication Integrity Center. Leah had strongly objected to having her name on the building. Nicolas had strongly ignored that objection. They compromised by naming the Patient Assistance Program after his sister instead. The Sofia Bellini Fund paid for independent medication testing and helped hospitals unable to afford verified specialty drugs. Federal prosecutors charged Vale, Marco, and 11 others across 4 states. 3 hospital executives went to prison. North Star Medical Distribution disappeared. Bellini Logistics survived. Barely. Nicolas voluntarily surrendered contracts worth more than $60 million and rebuilt the medical freight division around independent pharmaceutical verification. People in Chicago called it a remarkable corporate reform. People who knew Nicolas understood the truth. One woman had looked him in the eye and demanded he become worthy of the power he possessed. And somehow, astonishingly, he had listened. On a rainy October evening, Leah finished late at the hospital. She walked through the glass lobby expecting Nicolas's driver. Instead, she found Nicolas himself outside beneath the awning. No umbrella. Black coat, rain collecting in his dark hair. A black SUV waited at the curb. 2 discreet guards stood far enough away to pretend they weren't watching. Leah stopped. "You know cars have roofs." "Yes." "And drivers." "Yes." "Then why are you standing in the rain?" Nicolas looked at her. 6 months had not softened the danger in him. People still moved aside when he entered rooms. Men still lowered their voices when saying his name. He was still capable of terrifying violence. Still obsessive. Still difficult. Still learning. But when he looked at Leah, something existed there that belonged to no one else. "I wanted to see you sooner." Her heart performed the same ridiculous stumble it had the first night he drove her home. "You saw me this morning. Too long." "That sounds unhealthy." "It probably is." Leah walked beneath the rain toward him. Nicolas opened his coat and pulled it around her shoulders. She looked up. "You're getting me wet. You came outside. You could have waited under the awning. You could have stayed there." Neither moved. Rain whispered against the pavement. City lights reflected gold across the street. Then Nicolas reached into his pocket. Leah immediately narrowed her eyes. "No." He stopped. "I haven't done anything. That is a ring box." "It might not be." "It is absolutely a ring box." Nicolas Bellini, feared by half the city, actually looked uncertain. Leah's expression softened. "You're nervous." "No. You are. I have negotiated with armed men under less hostile conditions." She laughed. He took her hand. "I am not asking tonight." Leah blinked. "Then why bring it?" "Because 6 months ago I would have decided when you were ready." His thumb brushed her knuckles. "I'm trying something different." "What?" "Patience." She smiled. "That sounds painful." "Extremely." He returned the box to his pocket. "When you are ready, tell me." Leah studied him beneath the rain. Then she rose onto her toes and kissed his cheek. Nicolas frowned. "What was that?" "Patience." His arm tightened around her waist. "You are enjoying this." "Extremely." For once, Nicolas laughed. Not the restrained smile she had stolen in a warehouse. A real laugh. Warm and surprised and almost unfamiliar coming from him. Leah listened to it beneath the Chicago rain and thought about 2 identical bottles on a ballroom table. Something microscopic had been wrong with one of them. A tiny detail almost everyone had overlooked. That detail had exposed a criminal empire. It had nearly destroyed Nicolas Bellini. It had saved strangers they would never meet. And somehow it had led Leah to discover something else most people had failed to see. There were two versions of Nicolas too. The one Chicago knew, cold, dangerous, intouchable, and the man who had frozen $80 million in shipments because one pharmacy technician said something was wrong. The man who sat beside her while she examined labels until dawn. The man who learned that protecting her did not mean owning her choices. The man who could command an entire city and still stand in the rain waiting for one woman to choose him. Leah slipped her hand into his. "Take me home." Nicolas looked down at their joined hands. His expression softened only for her. Always. Behind them, the hospital lights glowed bright against the storm. Ahead, the black SUV waited. And somewhere in Nicolas Bellini's pocket rested a ring he finally understood he had no right to place on her hand until she asked him to. For a man who had spent his life taking control, waiting should have felt unbearable. Instead, walking beside Leah through the rain, it felt strangely like freedom.